Why is fire photography so damn hard, and how do you do it well?
Oh man.
What is the balance between a good photographer and then a good subject?
And all of a sudden your model is now on fire. Right out the gate. It is big, it is bright.
So, Vitz, you are a renowned photographer in the Pacific Northwest. Before we got acquainted, I actually heard about you as legend. People were, I know. People were like, oh my God, there's this person named Vitz, and they have these amazing photos, and you're doing photos, and you have to meet them. So I was super excited that we actually got acquainted and, we became close friends. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Well, thanks for having me.
So let's get the hard question out of the way first. Why is fire photography so damn hard, and how do you do it well?
Well, it's really hard because it's nothing but low light photography despite everything that you would think about it. Because again, most of the time when we're doing this, it's in like dark 30. So it's completely dark. It's low light because the only light source they have is the fire from the props. And not only is it low light, it's also moving. So it's high action, low light photography, which is like one of the hardest things that you could probably photograph. And yeah, it's tough.
It's a bit of a doozy. Can you walk us through like some of the settings that you might choose? What are things to look out for?
Oh man. Okay. So I would say, like, as far as settings go, like, it's so much trial and error. I guess it's
As a concept, as opposed to a hard number, I think.
yeah, as more as a concept. I mean, you're trying to keep your numbers, like certain numbers, lower than others. So you have your ISO that you want to try to keep as low as you can, and you want to keep your shutter speed as fast as you can, and you want to keep your aperture like as high low as you want, like as wide as you can technically, which is a very low number despite how all that works. The nonsense of photography that way. So it's just a matter of finding that perfect balance between all of it. So for me, I'm usually trying to shoot at like f-stops, or like my f-stop, I'm like trying to keep it as low as possible, since I usually navigate with zoom lenses, and the lower zoom lenses that you can typically get are at f2.8. So I'm usually within an f2.8 range. And I am trying to like get my shutter speed to at least like as like no lower than 1/320th of a second. And then my ISO, I'm trying never to push it higher than 6400. But again, like I'm like trying to keep it as low as possible, as low as possible, as low as possible, and trying my hardest not to blow my highlights out.
So hard.
Which, when you're trying to not keep your highlights low, it means your shadows are going to be black. So you kind of lose a lot of stuff in that way. So it's tough like that.
I think fire photography specifically is such an interesting balance between like, the raw emotion that you can get out of photography and just how technically challenging it is with like like you said, constantly moving light sources. Yeah. Super brights, super darks, the fast motion. It's just completely unpredictable. So
it's completely unpredictable, and it's really hard to kind of maintain, because even still, like, the fire itself is a living light in its own accord, because like you burn it like right out the gate. It is big, it is bright, but as it continues to spin, like the faster it's spinning, it's getting smaller because you're pushing all that air around it. So it's just kind of causing the light to shrink. But as the fuel burns, it's also causing that to shrink even further. And so like it's different when it's just like, hey, I'm like flowing this thing around really, really fast. And then all of a sudden it's just like, and now I'm going to pose. And all of a sudden it's just like everything is just like you're just constantly having to adjust. And one of the things that like I even recently like figured out for my own camera, because again, with our tech nowadays, like with mirrorless systems, it's like you have like the live viewfinder. So you like what you're seeing is exactly what you're going to photograph. And I found it to be so much easier to now if I just turn it off, because my autofocus for trying to capture people's faces is just getting lost in the darkness because it can't detect it. So like I went from like, oh yeah, having a DSLR where I'm like having to like constantly like, you know, click, 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 and like checking all my work. I am like, oh hey, with this new live viewfinder, this will be so much easier. I won't have to do that. Like I can do all that. I'm like, but I'm losing my subject. I can't find it. And I'm losing a lot of shots because of that. So now I'm like back to doing this again.
What's old is new again.
Exactly.
With fire photography, how much to get a good picture? What is the balance between a good photographer and then a good subject? Because I believe it's some combination of both.
It is a little bit of a good combination of both. I feel as though it is primarily the photographer. It's always going to come back to the photographer. I have like turned out some absolute banger pictures with people that have never picked up a fire prop before. Like I have a plethora of photos of just like first time spinners. Like they've never held a fire prop in their hand. This is their first time lighting it. Sometimes it's the first time that it's like, I just bought this prop and now I'm going to set it on fire for the very first time. They have no idea what they're getting into. And I can deliver really good photos of that. So to me, it's not so much your subject as much as it is just like you as a photographer, because like the more you learn as a photographer from whatever experiences you have, whether they be good experiences or bad experiences, it's like that education level, and it's how you can manipulate people, being like recognizing what makes for a good pose or what makes for good spinning. Because again, like most of the time, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Like I might nitpick it, being like, hey, like move your head down this way. Yeah. But for me, like with fire performers, it's like you're doing something that's relatively dangerous. Like there's a safety aspect where I don't want you to hurt yourself. So obviously, like I'm not really going to tell you fully like what to do.
Yep.
I'm just going to be like, hey, if you can you please move this over this way? In high hopes that's going to be safe, because again, like you're dealing with the elements too. Like that wind kick up, like it could just go the opposite direction. And all of a sudden your model is now on fire. Like it happens that way sometimes. Not really, but it can. So it's just a matter of being safe about that. So to me, it's all photographers. Like subjects are subjects. Like they're going to do what they're going to do. Like, but it's my recognition of what would make a good photo. Cause again, like I can blast like 1,000 photos of it, but really at the end of the day, I only need like 6 good ones.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. That's been my experience too. Cause like you said, I've gotten some absolute banger photos of people who just picked up the prop maybe once or twice. My approach is definitely spray and pray, and I'll figure it out in culling.
I mean, it really is the best method, because I mean, for me, it's like, because a lot of my time is spent with performers and doing like shows and whatnot. I'm only going to see this act maybe once. If I'm lucky, they're just going to have like whoever producer is hiring me for their show is like, oh yeah, we're going to book you for 2. I always push like have me do 2 shows because I get to do every act twice.
Yes.
But there are some people where they actually change out some of the acts during the show, so I get like 1.5 of the same show. But for the most part, though, a lot of the times I'm just there for like there's one show happening, and so I only get that one opportunity to actually like capture it. So again, it's a lot of that spray and pray methodology of just like hopefully one of these is going to work the way I need it to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of like watching shows and performances, like I know something that always worked well for me is people tend to have routines and patterns that they do. Like you'll see the same, 8 moves, just kind of woven in different ways over and over again. And I can use that knowledge, that previous knowledge, to kind of time and capture shots where they're like, okay, I know the prop is going to be over here and it illuminates their face just this way. I just need to wait for that. I see it now. And then I go and I start blasting the pictures. And
oh yeah, no, like there are so many people like right now. It's just like, I know I can photograph like 5 people extremely well because I know all their movesets. So I kind of know like when they're going to be doing this, they're going to be transitioning into something like this. Yeah. And again, like also being within like the community itself and like going to these flow festivals, I see a lot of their skill developments too. So I kind of like, oh, so you've been working on this thing. So now that I know you've been working on this, you're going to try to incorporate it. So now I know what to expect. But a lot of the time too, again, you see like a plethora of performers. Like I think there's only been like a handful of times now, because I've been photographing it for 8 years now. So it's kind of one of those like 7, 8 years. So to me is very much of just like so many, like I've seen like just about everything that can be done, but at the same time there's still so many people that just blow my brain.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you'd appreciate this act. It was at Cascade Juggling Fest that happened last week, to timestamp this. And one of the performers were doing like a juggling act, and they started bringing flashlights into it, so the whole stage would go dark. And now they're doing like juggling while doing light manipulation against this. And I am watching this. I'm like, I can juggle just fine. But the minute you want to like turn off the lights and now manipulate light with all this, I am going to drop everything. So my head was breaking around that. And simultaneously while trying to photograph it, I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm going to get any of this because it's dark. But again, it was just like there are so many tricks that I'll see. It's just like out of left field. It's just like, this is going to be like some new thing. And I'm like, man, like now I got to like prepare for this kind of like manipulation.
You just got to enjoy the ride, hope for the best and, see what you get.
Exactly.
So what did you start on first? Was it photography or is it fire spinning and flow arts?
So I started on photography first. It was like kind of the way it happened was I was on a date and we were just walking around Gasworks Park, and like I just kind of walked by and like there was just like a group of people just spinning fire just like right at the park, and I was just like, oh wow, this is great. And they're like, oh yeah, we kind of meet up here like every so often kind of thing. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then kind of fast forward like years down the line, and I was just kind of like decided that it's like, I really want to get into photography. I want to start doing this again. Because I used to do it in high school. And then through college, I did videography instead. I kind of wanted to be a film editor at the time, and then was just kind of more swayed of doing graphic design, artwork type stuff. So I just kind of did it as like a side thing. So when I started doing photography again, like the way it went was I got my camera, like it came in the mail. It was a Canon Rebel T3 with a 50 millimeter 1.8 lens. And the first thing I did when I photographed it was my friend was giving another friend a tattoo, like down in our living room. So I photographed that. The next day, I went out to the Dead Baby downhill race, and my friends was fire performing in that and started photographing that. And I was just like, this is awesome. Yeah. This is great. And then just kind of started diving back into it. It's like, wait, I remember there being like at Gasworks, like there's all this fire stuff going on. And so kind of rallied out information. I think I went on like Seattle Ravers of being like, who's got information on like this like fire thing at Gasworks? Anybody know any information? And someone chimed in and was like, oh yeah, we do like a Renegade, like Wednesday, like every other Wednesday kind of thing. And I was just like, cool, I'm just going to come by and I'll bring my camera and take pictures of this. It sounds really awesome. Sounds really cool. And I started doing that. And then I just kind of never stopped. I just kept coming back like week after week after week. And like, I'm kind of an introverted person, so I didn't really like talk to anybody until like, I think I'd been in there for like a couple of months of like showing up, taking pictures, putting them online. So like people like knew who I was, like to some extent, but no one actually really knew who I was because I didn't really talk to anybody. So it was really funny on that level. So after that, then I just started getting more into doing that. And then again, it's always one of those things where it's just like, when you join the communities, it's never a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So I was asked, it's like, well, what kind of fire thing do you want to do? And I was like, well, I've always been interested in learning fire breathing.
Ah, yes.
So I was told, it's like, all right, well, you should meet up with this group of people and they will teach you all about fire breathing. And I was just like, hell yeah. So I started doing probably the stupidest thing you could ever do fire-wise. It's not so much hard. Like fire breathing is really easy. It's just really stupid because you're just putting fuel in you're putting fuel in your mouth and taking a torch and just being like, and just baking a giant fireball in the sky. It's just like, It's really reckless, and it's just like one of the most stupidest things that you could probably do. But I had a great time doing it. And then after that, it just became, it's just like, well, like, has there ever been a prop you wanted to learn? And like, as a kid, my dad could like juggle. I always thought it was like the coolest thing, and my brain always struggled with that one. And so met up with Selene, and it was just like, yeah, I really want to learn how to juggle. And we spent a good portion of the afternoon teaching me how to juggle to where I could actually like do it myself. So that's it just kind of became one of those things. So then I started juggling, and then it's just like, you know, the world of props where it's just like, well, I mean, I have all this fire breathing stuff, and then I was gifted a set of fire juggling balls. So I've been like, you know, started doing that a little bit, and then I was just like, well, I really just want to move. And so I was just like, I'll just get a set of palm torches. So that way I can just like, I'll just have fire in my hands, and I can like dance and move and do all the movement stuff. And it was a lot of fun. And then Livy started developing gyro hoops, and I was like, ooh, I want one of those too. And now the collection of just ever expanding of just like collect all the props. Like, you know, I gifted my partner a fire sword. So guess who gets to use a fire sword now?
There you go. Hey, son, I got you a PS5 because I love you.
Exactly.
How does fire juggling work with just juggling balls? Because isn't the whole thing on fire?
So the way it works is it is a Kevlar cage. So it's like it's like kind of like this. It's just like this caged ball, and inside there is these two mounts that hold wicks that you essentially push together, and that way they're exposed, and you put fuel on that. But before you have to do that, you have to put the cage in water. Like kind of roll them around, kind of let them submerge, so the Kevlar on the outside gets wet. So that way when you finally like are like ready to fire them up, you light them up, and now you can actually just handle them without actually burning yourself. Like they will get dry within time, and they will start to get warm. But again, the idea is like you're not really holding on to them for very long. So it's very much of like you're just able to do it that way. So it's like, and there are juggling balls that like I've seen them before where it's just like it is just ball wrapped in Kevlar.
Giant Kevlar
it's
ball.
Just giant Kevlar ball that's just being wrapped, and they just set the whole thing on fire. And you could, you know, I've seen them like wear like fireproof gloves to be able to do it that way. But the ones that I have are like kind of this built-in cage system, so that way you don't have to use gloves. And
Makes a little bit more sense to me.
yeah, and it's very safe and easy to handle. But the only thing that sucks is using them on the beach, because the minute you drop them in the sand, now they're just covered in sand.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. What drew you to photography in the first place?
So my background in photography, I guess would kind of go way back. My mom was in video production and had been in my whole entire life until the day they retired. And so growing up, I would always like be able to like go with my mom and spend all this time on these actual like full on film sets. Mostly for like infomercials and commercials kind of stuff. So like Juice Lady, Juicers, Quick and Bright, like that kind of stuff, like, you know, your late night television kind of infomercial stuff. And it was always like really fun to be there. But it was kind of one of those things like I kind of got like was really into it. I really loved being there. And it was like my mom was just like super happy about it, because it was like, I'm not just some kid that's just running rampant on a film set. Like I am there. I want to be a part of production. Yeah. So like, hey, we need this shelving unit done. And I am on it. Like, give me like the instructions. I will build a shelf for you guys to put like all these products on. Or it's just like, hey, we like need like this kind of stuff like moved around. I'm like helping that. Like, you know, hey, we are like helping like with talent and all that kind of stuff, like being like their kind of assistants, like anything I can like do to help out on film set, like I'm there. Yeah. Like I'm like, my mom was like, no, he came to work and work harder than some of the people we paid to work. So I always had a knack for that. Like, I just loved being a part of film, and being behind the scenes on that level. And I loved having cameras. Like, back in the day, it was very much like disposable cameras were always kind of the thing. So it's just like, again, it's just like you just wind it up and click, wind it up and click, wind it up and click. And I just got really good at it. Like, because my mom was always happy because, like, my sister never really wanted to be much in pictures. And, like, when you're a kid, but, like, for whatever reason, I could get it, like, a decent picture of my sister. So my mom was like, oh yeah, like, at least your brother can get a shot of your sister, like, at those times. But so it kind of, like, egged me on. And I've always just had a deep interest and love of art. Like, my grandmother very much, like, loved catering into that, of being like at the time she was living in Connecticut and being like, hey, these art galleries are coming into town, and, like, taught me about, like, Picasso and all that kind of stuff. And I always just was art as a kid. That was always my favorite subject. I loved doing art. Art was always my thing. And when I got to high school, I was just like, my sister took photography when she was in high school, and I always thought it was really cool. And I was just like, well, I want to learn about photography. And I got lucky because our photography program in my high school was like more of the upperclassmen took it, just because they'd always get the priority. So it would always fill out with upperclassmen. So I was lucky, and there were only 2 sophomores in a full junior class, like photography class. So everybody else was juniors except for, like, the 2 sophomores that squeezed in. And so I was, like, learning basic black and white photography, like doing all this stuff on film, having to do all the prints that way. And I just loved it. And then, like, the following year, like, I was just like, is there another one I can do? So my junior year, I did, like, yearbook staff essentially as a photographer. And it just kind of, like, continued to perpetuate, like, through, like, my college to some extent. Like, towards college, I wanted to get more into film. So I started going behind the camera, like, on a film camera, because, again, doing all the film stuff.
Right.
So I was just like, I really want to do film editing and all that kind of stuff, because I really had a good knack for doing that too. Like, I did a documentary, like, for, like, History Day. So it was like a big historical project on the Tucker old car kind of thing that I took to nationals. And, that was, like, kind of one of those things where it's just like, well, I didn't take nationals, I took it to state, and, like, really loved that aspect of it. I was just like, I want to do all of this. So it just kind of took a back burner. And then, yeah, it was just like, after a while, I was just like, kind of started doing all the film stuff and took a break from all that. And then just one day I was just like, I hate my job, I hate my life, what am I going to do? And I was just like, well, let's just get back into it again. And just been hard pursuit ever since.
Cool. What advice would you give to someone who's looking to get into photography for the first time?
Just do it. Like, it really comes down to that. I'm trying to remember the photographer's name. It's kind of eluding me right now. But one of the things that he said that kind of separates, like, someone that's interested in photography versus someone that is a photographer is, if you see something, a photographer will actually stop what they're doing, grab a camera, and take a picture of it, whether it's good or not. Like, you're going to try to capture that because you see it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, to me, it's just like, it's just a matter of going out and doing the thing. Art is subjective. It always has been, always will be. Like, what's good to me is not good to somebody else, and what's good to someone else is definitely not good to me.
Right.
So it's very much of one of those systems of just like, but you just got to go out and do it. Like, I've seen, like, some amazing people, like, that do pictures with just Polaroids. Like, that's their thing that they want to do. There are some photographers that are out there still going on about film, like, despite the fact that it's just like, we kind of moved away from this for a reason. But there's just something about it to them that they absolutely love. And it's just, and to me, I'm just like, that's great. That's very expensive.
Oh,
I can't afford that.
Oddly expensive. Yeah.
It's incredibly expensive. So I don't. So yeah, like, to me, it's just like, anyone can really get into it. It's just a matter of dedicating yourself to actually wanting to do the thing.
Yeah.
So my advice to anyone wanting to get into photography is just start shooting and just do it because it makes you happy. Shoot what you like.
So, if someone was looking to get into photography and move past their phone camera and, start to invest in like a body and a lens, what do you recommend picking for a beginner? And what do you think would be more important for them to put their money into, the body or the lens?
So, for me, it's very much of all of your money to me, definitely invest in your glass. Your lenses are going to be the most important thing because like a lot of these systems that we have nowadays, like I still run off of the same lenses that I've had, like that I've ever like started. Like I bought my 24-70 2.8. It is the same lens to this day. My 70 to 200, it's the same lens the first time I bought it, despite going from a DSLR to a mirrorless system because they make an adapter for it. So I can just slap my old glass on there and it's great glass. So I tell people it's just like invest in lenses. Lenses are going to make all the difference in the world for your photos. When it comes down to like photographing, it's very much of just like, it was one of my friends, Scott, who was very much of just like, every time I'd be like, I think I need to get a new body. I think I need to get a new body. And he's like, tell me why you think you need a new body. And I explained it to him. And he's like, it sounds like you probably should just get a wider glass. And I was just like, yeah, maybe you're right. Or it's like, or maybe you should just get like a better, like, or a lens like with a wider aperture. And I was just like, okay, yeah. It always comes back down to glass because it's just like a lot of the times people are like, I like this image. And it's just like, I could shoot this image the exact same way on various cameras, but I can't do that on the exact same pieces of lens.
Right.
So to me, it's very much just like invest in lenses. As far as camera bodies go, for someone that's new and wanting to upgrade, I do recommend starting with a DSLR, as opposed to a mirrorless. Mirrorless cameras are very new to the market, so they're very expensive in comparison to DSLRs because now they're kind of fading out.
Sure.
But DSLRs, you can still get great photos. But there's a lot of technology in the DSLRs that are like haven't been integrated with the mirrorless systems yet. So kind of like the eye detection AF type stuff. It's not really in any of the mirrorless systems. Maybe in some of like the latest models of them. But some of the older ones, it's just like it teaches you habits and skills that are good to have, because if you go for like eye detection AF, let's say you're in a scenario and all of a sudden your camera just can't catch an eye. What are you going to do? Like now you're missing all these shots because you don't know how to react. You don't know how to set up the shots anyway. And I feel as though it's like, it really teaches you like DSLR, like you are forced to learn like the basics of shutter speeds and all this stuff, type of stuff, because you have to. You need to learn all this stuff. You need to learn composition. You need to know how like all these system components work, because then once you learn all that, you kind of master all of that, and then you go to a mirrorless system with all the latest and greatest that it has to offer. You realize just how much easier it is now and how to streamline everything in your processing.
Okay.
Because like with a DSLR, it forces you to learn composition rather than relying on your camera to be able to do composition for you. Because again, like you have to manually pick a point and then frame your photo, versus a DSLR where it's like, I can point it over here and then navigate all of this and it'll just detect it automatically. It's just like, cool, I don't have to think about it as much now, which is great for me because now I can easily focus on these types of aspects. But at the same time, when I get into situations where it's just like my camera's not picking up anything on its own, I can now switch it over so I have manual control and I can do it myself. And I'm like, I know how I need to be able to do this. I know how to figure it out. So to me, it's just like there's just good skill sets that you learn from having DSLR. And again, like they're going to be cheaper. Like I bought my my Canon Rebel T3 for $250.
Yeah.
Versus the Canon R6 Mach II, which is $2,500. Yeah, exactly. They get very, very expensive. And like there are cheaper end cameras too, like the Canon R8, which is like their newest like mirrorless system that's meant for like crop sensors. It's a lot cheaper. It's still like $1,000 camera. Like it's still an expensive camera. So like to me, it's just like I'd rather start cheap because again, like if you're like want to get into it, like you don't know if you're really going to like it. I didn't even know if I was really going to be like, I want to get into this. I don't know if I'm really going to want to do that. I don't want to spend thousands of dollars just on a like just to find out if I'm going to like it or not. Because who knows? Like, all right, great, I didn't like it. It's either going to sit building dust for the rest of its life, or I'm only going to like be able to go to like some camera store and sell it back for like a couple hundred, and I'm like just sunk like hundreds of dollars into something that I no longer want to do. So
Talking about composition, so for the layperson, what are some of the elements of a good photo?
oh man. Okay. So again, this comes back to like artist subjective and all of that kind of stuff. So to me, when it comes down to composition, like to me, the one that I tell people is like to learn is the rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds is essentially like if you take a photo and you divide it into three sections, so you have like 9 individual squares. The idea is you want to keep your subject either to the left or the right dominant of that frame, or you want it in the top or bottom part of that frame. Or if you're like someone like me, you're doing like this kind of number where it's just like it's all like shoved over to the side as far as possible. That's just my personal style. That to me is like, because at that point, like you have your main subject, but now you're being able to show like the entire background. You can show the setting, you can show the scene of like what's going on around it. Because again, like when you look at like a lot of people doing like candid photos, it's like think of like selfies in a sense, like as a baseline of doing this. It's like you see your subject, that's it. Like you have no context of like what's going on or what's going like where they are, like, you know. It's like, hey, like enjoying Hawaii, and it's like, great, here's you and like this great sunglasses, this great hat, and this great ensemble, and here's like this little patch of sand. I don't know if that's Hawaii sand.
Yeah.
So to me, it becomes like that's kind of what sets the difference. Is like what kind of elements are you really showing? And again, but you know, with selfies, it's like portraiture is also a big thing. Like, and it's all different. Again, it's like it becomes subjective like that. Like there's like composition is a subject I could talk like hours and hours on because there's so much. Because it's like, yeah, let's discuss Fibonacci's spiral, the golden ratio, and how everything it just alludes from spiral. So you start with your subject here, and you see how it just kind of spirals like this and like this, but it's all equal parts.
What are some other basic components of a good photograph? So we talked about composition, but what about lighting or colors or...
That is everything. So like your subject matters, like what kind of scene you're setting, it all matters. The colors, like can or cannot, depends on what kind of tone you're going for. After all, black and white is a photography. There's no color in that.
Timeless.
Granted, to me, I'm just like with black and white, it's just like it's usually my cheater's way out of like bad color swap. Like anytime like you see something that's of mine that's black and white, like it's most likely because the color was really bad. But again, like it helps on those kind of levels. But you know, there's times where I've done stuff where it's just like it's a little bit more vintage. So I'll usually just saturate the colors. So I always like you still have the color elements to it, but it's a little bit more black and white. Anyway, like there's also like to me it's just like the biggest thing with photography, like I guess is the most important thing is what's in focus. A lot of the times I do see this a lot, and like it becomes that like hoity-toity like pinky up kind of thing of me where I'm just like looking at photos and I like see these people, and it's just like I've seen photos where it's just like this photo, like the subject, like it's cool, it's a fascinating photo, the composition is great, the color and lighting is really good, but then I like zoom in on it, like, but it's out of focus, or you missed your mark, like this is what you're focused on, and then and I look at it and I'm like, this is not good. And like even for me, like it happens all the time. Like there are so many times where I've like looked at a photo of mine and I'm like, this pose is perfect, like the lighting is nice and even and it's so great, and then I'm just like, but my photo's locked in on the background and completely missed my subject, so garbage.
So to make me feel better, and hopefully anyone else listening, what is your hit rate in terms of I took X number of pictures and I deliver X number of pictures?
All right, cool. Right now, I would say I usually bat 1 out of 10.
Okay, that's about where I'm at.
So
Yeah.
I will go to a show. I will take about 4,000 photos, and I will dwindle all of that trash down to about 400 that are typically good. And I will continue to dwindle that list down. Because a lot of the times, especially when you're spraying and praying, you're doing the high shutter speed type stuff. It's like, how many of the exact same shots do you really need? And being able to like, this is the one that I need to be able to sell this image kind of thing. So like, I will photograph a show. I will actually, better yet, a lot of times I'm photographing 2 shows. I will walk away with about 4,000 photos. I will deliver about 200 to my client. Like at the end of the day, just being like, here's 200 good ones. This pretty much tells you your whole entire show. And they will go on Instagram and probably post about 20 or 30 of them.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That's been my experience too.
Yeah, I think it was the Seattle Erotic Art Festival was the only time where I delivered about 300 photos. And the photography lead told me, it's just like, I used about 100 of your photos for the official album itself that the Seattle Rock Art Festival puts out for everybody to see. So I was just like, oh man, you actually used like 100 of my photos. I was like, hell yeah, that's great. That means like 1/3 of this album belongs to me. And I was like, this is great. Like it was definitely a huge ego boost for me personally.
No, it feels good.
It feels
Absolutely.
good.
So, what is your technique for getting those photos culled down? Because let's say you start with 4,000 raw photos. How the hell do you dwindle it down to 200 final deliverables?
Delete. Ooh, that's good. Delete. No, I look at the images and again, first thing I'm noticing is like, is it in focus? Great. How's the composition of it? Is it good? Is my subject in frame? Like, do I have like, cause a lot of the times, like I try to shoot a little bit closer. So like, and again, we're dealing with performers. We're dealing with like hula hoopers. Like, for example, it's just like their hand may be in frame, but the rest of their hoop is like completely like cut off. And I'm like, no, next. Gone. So that's not going to work. Like, where are they looking? Like, are they looking right at me? Or are they looking over this way? Or are they giving me a weird look? Because it happens. Like, try as you may, it's just like sometimes that kind of stuff happens. Like, we're not responsible for all the faces. Like, we all
make weird faces.
We all make weird faces. It happens. Like, and trust me, I could definitely put out an album of weird faces, but I don't. And I usually get rid of those photos anyway because like they're not going to get used. Like I think I've only stumbled across 2 where I like literally caught like comedy gold, and I sent them to the performer like directly. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to use this. I do think it's hilarious. Like, here you go.
I want you to see it.
But I want you to see this. Like, hopefully you'll have just as much of a good laugh about it as I did. And most of the time, like, oh my God, that face, having a good laugh. And then, like, that's the end of the discussion. But it's just like, so again, is my subject in focus? No, gone. All right, cool. Is their body position, is it good? No, gone. Is the lighting working for me? Is my highlights are blown out? Is it too dark? No, gone. And it's just like, yeah, am I cutting anything off? Is the photo actually even good? Like, does it actually like look like the story that I want to, like, that they are trying to tell? Does it actually look like they're like, that is what they are wanting to tell? Like, I saw the performance, like, I've seen some beautiful performances where like they're putting their heart and their soul into it. And it's one of those things like, and sometimes you get photos that are just like, that doesn't really look like it. And it's not the performer, it's just that moment between, like, you know, transitioning between moves. It's not going to work. Gone. So again, it's just like, I have more reasons to delete photos than I do to keep. So like, to me, it's just like my photos have to work very hard for me to like want to keep them. And sometimes like I will go through a whole entire editing process of being like, cool, so it survived the first rounds. It survived the second rounds, and now it's time for the cleanup. And I do all the hard work cleaning it all up. And I have stared at a photo, and I'm like, you know what? I just put in all this work, and I want it gone.
Next.
You know what? This isn't working for me anymore. So next.
Yeah, it sounds like you and I have a very similar culling process. Like, the criteria for rejection is so strong. It's almost, I cull to keep, meaning as I look at a picture, by default, I'm getting rid of it, and then I only select the ones that I like, and that's
Yeah.
a very small percentage of what I actually take.
Exactly. No, it's the exact same thing. Like it's hard to like find, like, you want like the good shots, because to me it's just like at the end of the day, like I could deliver like hundreds of photographs back to performers. Like I could, like, just anything that just seems like it would work, like, to any degree. But they're going to be posting these on their social medias. And to me, it's just also like, this is my work too. I need this to represent what I'm capable of doing. And I want to always put my best foot forward. So I'm only going to give them back what I believe to be the strongest of the stuff, like the best of the best with honor, sir. And like, I want to make sure that, to me, it's just like, also at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, these performers are getting their photos back, so they have them for their purposes. But I am also sending these photos and these albums to other clients. And I want to make sure that they are seeing, it's just like, these are also like, because to me, it's just like, I like performers, like, if I'm having to do all the work, like, I'll be like, here's your chunk, here's your chunk, here's your chunk, here's your chunk, kind of thing. With producers, I'll send them out the whole album. I don't know how they're distributing them, so it's very much of like one of those things. I'm not entirely sure of the full process, but again, it's very much of just like, but if I'm like, hey, like, I see you're doing the show, I'd love to photograph this show, like, this is very much my kind of thing, I promise. Like, here are some albums to kind of showcase like what I believe your show is going to be like. This is what I can deliver for you guys. And so I'm sending them the full album of being like, this is one whole entire show. Like, here is like all 200 pictures of them, so that way you can see this is what I'm going to deliver. Like, you will get the exact same thing.
I mean, over the course of your career, you've delivered tens of thousands of photos at this point. What do you think is the most fun you've had doing photography?
The most fun that I have is really... It really is all the fire stuff. Of course. It really is. It's really cool. It's really fun. I've gotten so close with the community at large, and like I love all the circus stuff. Like, when it comes down to it, I love working with performers. Like, they're some of the nicest people like I've ever encountered, and they're like, a lot of them are very down to earth and very humbling. Like, there have been like performers that I have like seen their performances, and I look up to them and be like, oh my god, like, I actually gotta like photograph this performance. Holy crap. And then like, and I remember once I was just like, this like one juggler performer, like bounce juggler performer, was doing like amazing acts, and he's like tours all over the world, and I was just like, oh my god, I was so happy to photograph. And he looked at me, he's like, you're Vitz. And I was just like, yeah. It's just like, I love your work. And I was just like, I
told you, renowned photographer.
But yeah, no, like, again, like, I mean, but at the same time, for like, and I love this story too, but I remember going to Fire Performer of the Year, photographing that down in Portland. And I'm hanging down in the green room with all the performers, and like, this was like right after Kindle, like, and all that jazz. And I'm like hanging out, we're like talking with everybody, and everyone was just like, oh my god, I love Jason's photos. Like, oh, he's such a great photographer. And I am like sitting there, I'm like, I'm here, yo. What am I, chopped liver? I mean, I could call him. And I think I texted you right after that, being like, hey, like, people are here in the green room talking mad love behind your back.
I love it. It's such a tight-knit community. That's what I love about the Flow Arts. Everyone seemed to be so welcoming and, you know, so inviting and open to sharing these positive experiences.
Like, I mean, I've been a part of like very many communities, and a lot of them are like that too. Like, the burlesque community is also like very opening as well. Granted, they are a little bit more guarded. They have to be, because like, respectfully, like, what they're doing, like what they do is like great work. Can be a little bit dangerous on like certain aspects of it. They're like, and same with like drag, all of that kind of stuff with our world, like that kind of stuff exists. Those dangers out there exist. So they are a little bit more guarded, but boy howdy are they like super welcoming too. Like, again, like, they're like, but the flow community, the circus community, like, I've never encountered a group of people where they've just been like, welcome, like, what do you want to do? What do you want to learn? Like, let me help, let me teach. Like, everyone is just like so engaged with like wanting to better themselves. Like, again, like it's so amazing of being like, I will take these classes like and workshops from these like amazing performers and then go see their gala showcase, and it's just like the most mind-blowing thing I've ever seen. And I was just like, this guy was literally just like teaching me like 3-ball juggling, and I'm watching him do like the most insane tricks ever. And like, you know, it's the same thing with like Kindle, of like the amount of talent that like would bring in like all over the world, of just being like, here are these like people that have like worked with Cirque du Soleil and like internationally travel and are like these like top of the peak performers. And it's just like, and I get to learn from them, and they want to talk to me, and they want to hang out, like, and it's just like, you know, it's very much of like the ultimate green room experience.
Absolutely,
like
yeah.
to be a part of. Like, I've never met like such a like more humbling bunch of people.
So, what are some of the, let's go to the other side of things. What are some of the craziest or worst experiences you've had with photography?
Oh man, so Kindle last year, I definitely had a huge case of the gremlins. I had a SD card just completely like malfunction on me, and I lost like a good chunk of photos. Mostly like of one of my friends, Dresden, like, and Sterling, who were like, hey, we like, Dresden's a photographer, Sterling also does like photography and videography, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, pretty sure. And so like they don't have very many photos of like the two of them. And so I was just like, yes, let's do this. And I was just like taking photos, and then like after all was said and done, I realized that I didn't have any of those photos. And I was just like, you know, taking the advice of like your advice. It was like, all right, cool, throw it in the computer, see. And it's like, there's data. Great, cool. Hopefully there's something there. So like after Kindle, like, oh, I was also dealing with that weird spec issue too, like
that
on my
spec issue,
which we had no idea what ended up happening to it. And okay, so the spec issue that I had was like, so if I had my aperture wide open at 2.8, you couldn't see anything. But the minute I started narrowing it down past like 3.54, like it was like there's nothing on any of my lenses. So I could take off a lens, I put on a new one, it would still be there. I look at the sensor, there's nothing there. There's just this weird speck that's just there, and I don't know why. It just would not go away. I had a battery, like I was charging up our batteries for the gala show that was happening, like, and I'm like, all right, cool, so this one's dying. I'm gonna pop in this next one. It was fully charged. I remember grabbing it right off the charger, popped it in, and it was dead. Dead. And I was just like, so I luckily had another one that was like had some power left in it, and I'm like the last 2 acts, and I am like very much picking and choosing my shots, because I'm like, this could be the last one, this could be the last one, and it managed to survive throughout the whole gala show. But like the last 2 acts, like I barely took anything of them, and I feel really bad about that too. But they did get something out of it at the end of the day, and I don't think it's not that big of a deal.
So at Kindle, when I was doing the interviews for, I can't remember his name, but he was one of the Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah. You're telling me, yeah.
Yeah, I have all right, let's get started, and then nothing. And then at the very end, like, oh, that interview went great, and I hit record. So I just missed the whole thing because I got the records.
But the one that I think that always sticks with me is how I used to photograph Ringside Wrestling. And this was like one of our, like the WrestleMania for like our local thing. So it was like our big event. It was hosted at the Showbox Market versus like we used to be at like Evolve Fitness. And so it was like, you know, kind of like they have like a boxing ring kind of thing. So it was just like we'd invade like this like fitness like thing. A gym. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. So it used to be hosted at a gym, and so this time it was like the one show that was like, we're going to the Showbox Market. We put it on the main pit floor, and like it was a really cool experience. So it was the very first match, and this was supposed to be a title switch. So the person who had like our biggest title, which so they had the biggest title, and it was supposed to go to the next wrestler. This match, I did not know, was not going to last for very long. It was actually a very, very short match. So the wrestlers come out one by one, photographing, everything's going fine. And then it's like, all right, 3, 2, 1, here we go, ding, ding, and my camera just seizes. I'm looking through my viewfinder. It is showing me nothing but black and an error screen. Fuck. Turn it off. Turn it on.
Yeah.
Nothing. I am like, panic. Okay, I will take the battery out, reset it that way. So I pop the battery out, push it back in, close the flap, turn the camera on. It fires up. Look up, match is over.
Oh no.
So so in real time it's very much of just like, and done.
Oh my
and
God.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I have no photos of this match. It's like this huge matchup, and it's just like, and for me it's just like, since this is like a big thing, like we have other photographers there, so the match got covered, but my camera just decided to like just break at like the worst possible time, like for like one of the biggest matches of the night kind of thing. And I was just like, and these things, they just happen. They do. And of course it's always the hindsights of everything. I have lost files before. I remember going out to Portland to photograph a fire friend of mine. Like the specific point of me going out to Portland was specifically for this shoot, and I have no idea what happened, but it just disappeared off my drive. Vanished. No idea what happened to it. Like, all the other files were there, all the other projects were there, but this one, gone. It was gremlins, man. That shit, it happens.
I mean, yeah, like I try to be as redundant as I can, and there are some techniques that you can use. Like, at least for me, my camera, so I use a Sony a7 IV, and it has dual SD card slots, and I can save to both cards simultaneously. So that's covered my ass a couple times. But when I do like wedding photography, hell, I bring 2 cameras sometimes, just because live events, especially a wedding, like, you're not going to get that moment back.
No.
And it, like you said, it can happen in the blink of an eye. 5 seconds, the kiss is gone.
Yeah.
So, like, you just have to be prepared and bring all of the tools. Like, plan for the absolute worst and hope for the best.
Oh, yeah. No, and again, like, it becomes like the complications. Like, I try to be as redundant as I can, too. Like, for me, it's just like, I back up everything on 2 separate hard drives. Like, I know everyone's like, oh, you could always do cloud storage, and I'm just like, man, something could happen to the cloud. Like, anything can happen to anything, and all of a sudden it's just like all your stuff on the cloud. No, that's all gone too. Like, it's lower probability, but it can happen. But for me, I'm like, I need hard files. I need everything, because again, like, I will edit on the go, so I need to be able to have everything. Like, I will go off into the mountains and I will edit while I'm in the mountains. Who knows? Definitely wouldn't be the first time. And it's very much of like, for me, it's just like, I like SD cards, like the really good ones that you really want. They're very expensive. Cameras are very expensive, so I operate off of just one camera. Like, I have, depending on what kind of event I'm like, I may not be able to do redundancy shooting because I don't have that kind of card space for how long I need to be shooting for. So, like, for Kindle, it's very much just like designated cards. I'm just like, all right, here's this card. Like, I'm cruising through cards because it's the only way that I can like document everything. And so, like, obviously, like, I will buy cards when I can, but again, like, having a second body for me is just like, it can be expensive.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So it's like, to me, it's just like, I operate off of one camera. I got very good at swapping lenses because it forces me to, and being able to plan for those kind of moments. So yeah, it's like, if I could afford a second body, I probably should.
In due time.
I mean, and a lot of photographers will tell you that too. But again, if you're getting new to it, like, hey, this is something you're looking into, you don't need to buy 2 cameras. Even as a wedding photographer, like, sometimes, like, I know, like, a lot of people will be like, having 2 cameras for weddings should be a thing. if you get really proficient with one lens, like you can cover a lot.
Absolutely.
You can do a lot. Like I would like to me, like I will swap out lenses between certain events. So like if I'm shooting a ceremony, like I am on my 70 to 200, I'd rather have all the like I'll be far back. I'll have all the range, but I have all the view. Like it's kind of one of those things. Like I will be able to move in the backgrounds a hell of a lot better than if I'm like running up close and like doing all this. Yeah, I don't need to do all of that. And sometimes it's all that necessary either. But at the same time, hey, like receptions come around. Yeah, I'm going to pop on my 2470 because now I'm closer to the action. So I'd rather have that instead. So like it just becomes being proficient with that. So to me, I'm just like, oh, you just find the opportunities to swap out. And sometimes, hey, like there have been moments where I'm like, oh God, I got to switch this out now. And like doing it at Fire Circle gets you very good because it's very dark. So it's just like, and again, like black on black on black. And the amount of times I've lost and dropped lens caps is at Fire Circle. And it's just like, what are you looking for? Well, I'm looking for a lens cap. What does it look like? Well, it's this very thin, small black disc.
Yeah.
Is it important? Kinda.
Amazing. So, what do you think is the next thing on your photography journey? What are you trying to experiment with? What are you trying to do?
So right now, I'm kind of in between projects right now. So I've been working on this Sad Clown project, and hopefully by the time this is released, I'll actually have more underway. It's becoming my first book project. So I just kind of recently obtained a couple of publishers. Gotta send out emails, get those rejection letters. Yeah, and being like, hey, like here's this project I want to build. I have everything. It's more or less ready to go, but I just need to know next steps because I've never put a book together, but I'm ready to find out. Yeah, and try these things out. As far I'm for what I've been photographing, like it's been growing as the business that it has been as far as performance goes. Like every month between now and September, I have like circus gigs like all over the place. So that keeps me very busy on that one. I do have a couple projects of some art projects that I've been meaning to get to, but again, it's just a matter of finding those down times because they're kind of like the fun projects. And again, kind of even for people that are wanting to go into portrait photography and do that kind of stuff. Depending on where you are, I know in Seattle we have the Seattle Open Shoots. So it's a great way of networking. Like it's just finding like those photography groups that help you work with like designers and models and hair and makeup artists and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I have that network, and now a lot of those people are my friends, which is great. So like I have like so many of these like project ideas that I really want to do and like kind of orchestrate, but it's a matter of finding that downtime because like it's, they're all the passion project type stuff. And it's one of those things where, hey, capitalism. And I have things I need to be able to afford in my life, like a roof over my head. So it becomes one of those things. So yeah, a lot of the money racing kind of stuff, which is, but again, like a lot of what I do is all performance. Yeah. So I you want me to come to your circus and you want me to photograph your shows and then you want to pay me? Yes, please.
This can't be real. Get out of here.
This can't be real. Like this is what I signed up for.
So how does someone get into that position? How does someone, reach out, make the connections, and become the photographer that is reached out to for these exciting paid gigs?
It's networking. It really, you find the events that are happening local to you. You reach out, you network with the people that are putting on the show. Like I would just go out being like, hey, this thing is coming to Seattle. Like I would like to photograph, like I see you're coming. This is what I do. I would love to come photograph your show. And most of it's like you either tell you, yeah, no, that'd be great. Like we'd love to have you come out. Like, and come photograph the show, or they will tell you no, or they just won't tell you anything. But it's a matter of just like reaching out to everything and anything that you can get your hands on. It definitely is starting out. It becomes that whole like say yes to everything.
Yeah.
So that way you kind of like, and be real with people. I am constantly honest with people about like everything that I feel as though I'm capable of doing. So for me, I was just like, I can photograph your show. I've never really done anything like this before, so I'm willing to like waiver. Like if you just give me a ticket, give me a +1 so I can bring a friend, kind of thing, or I don't know, give me a drink ticket so when we're done I can at least like have myself a drink or something. Most of the time, like again, like a lot of people will say like, hell yeah, we'll take on like someone for free, and you build those networks that way. Because sometimes it's just like, well, we can't pay you now, but if we like what you do, we like working with you, like more shows will come, we'll start paying you more. Like for me, like there are a couple of people where it's just like, I am their go-to photographer. Like they, Tacoma Cabaret has started booking me out for 2025.
They must really like you.
They really do like me. And it's very much one of those things. Like, and again, they have me come out and they pay me for it every single time, and it's great. And I love them so much. Like, and I probably would do that if they didn't pay me, but please do. No, but you build these networks that way. Like you build a portfolio that way. So like you just got to network your ass off. Like it's all about who you know, who you meet, and people that are willing to like bring you back. Like it's work. It's just networking is really the name of the game when it comes to photography and like being successful like that. Because the more you do it, the more you build, and then you just keep branching out there. And then at some point, like you'll start realizing it's just like, hey, I'm taking all these things, and now I kind of want to start getting paid for it. And you can start charging for whatever. Like as odd as it is, like I do not advertise myself as a wedding photographer. I still get people asking me to photograph their wedding. And again, like I am upfront and I am honest about everything, every aspect of it that I'm going to do for it. I'll be like, all right, it's going to cost you like just as much as any other wedding photographer is, which is a lot.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of money. Like wedding photographers, like if you want to do photography to make money, weddings is definitely going to be your bread and butter.
Yep.
Graduations are also another really good one for it. I know for me, it's just like, I know I could start doing mitzvahs, but I'd rather not. Nothing personal, but it is. Well, that kind of is, but not really. Anyway, it's just something I just don't really care to do. So when it came to weddings, it's the same thing. I don't really care to do weddings all too much. So I tell them, it's just like, I'm coming out of this as a photojournalist. Think of me like that. I am not here to wrangle cats. I am not here to deal with your family.
So much of the job, yeah.
Which is so much of the job. I don't want to do that. So if you want these things, that's going to be your responsibility to deal with that. And if you don't want to do that, if you give me like $500, I will hire someone to do that for you. I will tell this photographer straight up, it's like, your sole responsibility is for the bride party, like the bride and groom's party, and like the family, and that's it. You don't have to do the ceremony, you don't have to do the reception, you don't have to deal with any of that. All you have to do is just photograph and wrangle cats. People management. That is going to be your job, your responsibility. Because to me, I'm just like, because when I do these interviews, the only people I'm talking to are the bride and groom. That's all that matters to me. Like, I am here for you. That's it.
Yeah.
I will do behind the scenes stuff if you want me to. I will obviously do like a couple session with you guys. If you want to bring like your brides and groomsmen in, like that's fine. We can do that kind of stuff, but I'm not dealing with your family. Not really here to like kind of like do all this crazy stage stuff. And then people are still like, yeah, we still want you to be there. And it's like, okay.
Okay. I told you the thing. Cool.
Then you got me booked, and here, like, give me this for your deposit, and I will see you on this day. And again, and I'm not, and again, like there's a lot of photographers out there that are just like all about the package deals and like here are the prints and like all this kind of stuff. And that's up to them. Like that's how they want to do their game. I don't care to do that. I could set up my website so if you want to buy prints, you can buy prints separately. But again, for the most part, I'm like, I am here. I'm going to photograph your wedding. I'm going to edit these pictures to make them look really, really good in a way you're really going to like it. And I'm going to give them back to you, and I will take the rest of my money, and we will be it. That will be that. So
Something I think you've done incredibly well is you've established, a brand of David Horvitz and Vitz photography, but you've also just established a reputation and a personality about you that, it precedes you. I heard about you much longer or much before I actually met you, but it's nothing.
hopefully nice things.
Yeah. But it has been nothing but positive sentiment. Like, people gush about your work. They talk about how kind you are, how easy you are to work with, how you can kind of coach people and model them to get good pictures out of them. Just every facet of your interaction with people has been stellar and phenomenal. And because of that, I think that's why you are the go-to photographer for so many people. You may have boundaries and conditions that would put off others, but they're okay with it because they are getting you, and that's what matters.
No, and again, if that's what it is, and I thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. Because to me, I'm just a guy that just pushes buttons. Really, I've flip some switches, rotate some dials, but mostly I'm just pushing buttons. But to me, it's just I work with some of the most amazing, most talented people on this planet. I really do think of myself as just I'm just a guy that just has somehow surrounded himself with some of the most amazing people, because people are just that amazing. Yeah. People are amazing. People are awesome. They're capable of doing the coolest things ever. And I just want to take pictures of people doing just that. I want people just to be themselves. I could probably go into a whole thing of how studying modeling and all that stuff. It does in fact help. Being on the other side of the camera does in fact help, and learning how to model can work wonders. But for the most part, I'd rather just let people be people. Yeah. And I'll just let them do their thing. Again, most of the time when I'm doing fire shoots, it's just what do you want me to do? I'm you do your thing, I'll do my thing, and we will meet right here in the middle.
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal. So a closing tradition that we have on the show is that the previous guest leaves a question for the current guest, and they do not know who they're leaving it for. So the question left for you is, what advice would you give to your 16-year-old self?
Stick with photography. You'll be happier that way. I mean, 16-year-old me, definitely had it figured out way before, I did. Cause, again, it was very much of, I was really into photography. And then I was just no, I really want to do all this video stuff. And then I was just but I really got in, doing photography. I got really into Photoshop. Photoshop was, wasn't new, but it was really getting good. Yeah. So I really got into graphic design, and then I pursued that, and then it was just that's what I majored in and all that stuff. And I was just should have just stuck with photography way back then. But at the same time, you learn the lessons you learn from where you're at. So yeah, if I could tell 16-year-old myself, if I could say what I could have told myself 20 years ago, I've been yeah, you should just stick with the photography stuff. You think you'll really gravitate towards that.
Do you think it was necessary to step outside and learn the lessons that you did and then come back to photography to make you feel as a more rounded individual?
Totally. It's again, I wouldn't have gotten here if someone came out of nowhere and gave me the answers, would I have really learned the lessons that I've learned?
Yeah.
Would I have shaped to been the person that I am today? Would you and I be having this interaction?
Yeah,
who knows what would have happened? So it's very much of I have no regrets. It's definitely one of those things where it's just but at the same time, I'm just but boy, howdy.
No, life takes us in fun and unexpected and strange directions. So things happen for a reason. You just don't always know what they are until they become apparent. Cool. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming out. Our friendship is some of the most valuable experiences that I've had.
Same here. Again, it's always so much fun hanging out with you and talking with you.
So Vitz, where would you like to draw people's attention to, and where can people find you?
So people can find me on Facebook at Vitz Photography. You can follow me on Instagram, also Vitz Photography, but it's at Vitz Photos. And you can like check out my website, which is www.vitzphotography.com. So those are usually the best three ways of like seeing my stuff, reaching out to me, however you see fit.
Oh, absolutely. I will try to send as many people your way as I possibly can. Your photography is awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I greatly appreciate you.
Greatly appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Cheers.